So there's one dude I subscribe to on YouTube by the name of Paul Haider, Master Herbalist. Now, he's an eccentric guy. I think he's 68. He does look his age, and I'm not picking on the guy because of his age, but what I'm picking on him about, and I'm not picking on him about this, I'm trying to prove a point. He made a video about how protein powders are bad for you, okay, and how there are contaminants in protein powders. And I forgot to get into it in one of my last videos about how Dr. Greger misrepresents studies by focusing on certain things and omitting others. Now, Dr. Greger overplayed the role that there's arsenic in rice, and it's true, there's a lot of arsenic in rice compared to other foods. However, arsenic, which is a carcinogen, if you look at the studies, high rice consumption, including high brown rice consumption, all rices, brown rice, white rice, etc., is not associated with any real statistical statistically significant increase in cancer. And of course, before I get into this video, I need to let everyone know I'm not a doctor. I'm not a physician of any kind, not a nutritionist, not a dietitian, not a master herbalist, none of that, okay? So what I want to point out is this Paul Haider guy is talking about, and I'm going to do two things. I'm going to point out his fitness routine and his diet. Now, what's funny is his diet, which I will leave a link to, the diet that he recommends, actually is not that bad. What I'm a little irked about is his talking about protein, and I'm going to explain why. As I've stated in previous videos, I was duped into following the McDougall diet, the starch solution, which is an extremely high carbohydrate diet. Now, most of what Dr. McDougall says, and even what Dr. Haider says, Dr. Haider's diet is actually a decent diet. It is a standard decent diet, a standard decent vegan diet. However, promoting the idea that high protein is bad for you is a bad idea, as you can tell by the shape of the guy. And he is 68 years old, but he's no Vladimir Putin. I personally, I hope to make it to 68 at this point. I'm not dissing the guy for being old. But he's not as healthy or as in shape as other people his age. Now, it does look like from his before and after photos that he got himself healthy at a late stage in life. So he has no teeth, but it appears as though he had lost his teeth prior to getting himself healthy. I'm not judging the guy for his appearance, okay? But the thing is, his idea that high-protein diets are bad for you is baloney. A regular high-protein diet, generally speaking, is good for most people. Even with animal proteins, it's good for most people. It's not necessarily bad for you because of the protein. What makes a high animal protein diet bad for you, generally speaking, is the fat. It's the high cholesterol and things like that. There's also new 5GC, which seems to be pro-inflammatory. And as I've stated a bunch of times, I personally follow a 100% plant-based diet. I personally would recommend everybody follow a 100% plant-based diet. Now, the reason I follow it is because of ethics, but there are extra health benefits that come with following a 100% plant-based diet. But in the same sense, to tell people not to follow a higher protein diet and saying that a high protein diet is bad for you is omitting a lot of evidence to the contrary. Okay? Now, of course, then he was saying, in the one on protein powder, I'm going to leave a link to his channel, a link to the protein powder video, and a link to his video where he's talking about his exercise protocol, and I'll get into that in a second. So what you'll see with the protein powder, he's saying that plant protein or animal protein increases kidney failure and things of that nature. And I think what it was is I don't think he was reading the research properly. He didn't show what research he read this from. But the thing is, and I'm also going to leave a link to his diet, so you can see his diet is not a bad diet. It's a healthy plant-centered diet, or 100% plant-based diet. It's not a bad diet. So the thing is, he's saying, plant protein and animal protein harm the kidneys. I think he may have been viewing research that was done in animals that already were suffering from kidney failure, which may be true. But it is also known through research that soy protein improves, high amounts of soy protein improves kidney filtration. It improves the ability of the kidneys to operate better. And it's also known that a number of amino acids, if given in like the free form amino acids, and there's a link to this research in the description, if given to animals with kidney failure, it arrests the kidney failure. It's also known that the amino acid glycine is regularly given to protect kidneys from drugs that harm the kidneys. So my point is his idea, and this is the problem that I have with this low protein mentality. Now, back in the days of John Harvey Kellogg and Jethro Kloss, a lot of people claimed that John Harvey Kellogg and Jethro Kloss were low protein people. They weren't low protein people. They were actually high protein people. They just promoted the idea of getting your protein from things like peanuts and soy and things of that nature. And you can read their books. Go read Back to Eden by Jethro Kloss. Go read some of the writings of John Harvey Kellogg, and you will see they're not against protein. They're against animal protein because of the negative impact it has on health. And there are some reasons, such as the higher methionine content in meat, and of course the new 5GC, like I pointed out. These are benefits, these are added benefits. Avoiding these things improve the benefits of a 100% plant-based diet, along with the fact that you're getting protective phytonutrients and higher amounts of certain amino acids in relation to other amino acids, like higher glycine in relation to methionine. But what I want to point out is, again, the misrepresentation of data, also by Dr. Greger, for example. Dr. Greger will regularly say supplements don't do anything, supplements don't do anything. You can watch most of my videos on supplements, including this video, and hit the description, and you will see proof that, yes, indeed, supplements do stuff. Supplements can help immensely with many issues. So my point is when you have people like Paul Haider, Master Herbalist, or Dr. Greger misrepresenting data by omitting a slew of data that says the opposite, it's dishonest at best. Okay, it's not very honest, and it's very detrimental to people like me that are ethically vegetarian. I follow a 100% plant-based diet for ethical reasons, but when you start being dishonest about the health, about certain things, and again, a 100% plant-based diet properly planned is most likely the healthiest diet from what we're seeing, from what research says. Again, because you're avoiding things like new 5GC and things of that nature. You're removing certain things from the diet that are detrimental to the health. Now, a lot of people, like for example, people wanted me to, is it Brenda Davis, I think was the name of the woman. I have a whole playlist set up that's about Brenda Davis. I think her name's Brenda Davis. I hope I didn't get that wrong. So I'll leave her playlist too. But even she admitted, now she dissected the keto diet and the paleo diet, and she dissected them, and she pointed out the risks and benefits of the keto diet. And essentially what she pointed out was, yes, indeed, there is a metabolic advantage to a keto diet. Now, a lot of people, she pointed out a lot of the harms of a keto diet. She also pointed out that a keto diet does improve seizure control in children that are resistant to the medicines, the anti-seizure medicines. Keto diets have a purpose, okay? However, it does not have to be an animal-based keto diet. That's what I think a lot of people are not talking about. They're not talking enough about the fact that you can have a plant-based keto diet. And it doesn't even necessarily, for the purpose of weight loss and metabolic advantage, it doesn't even necessarily have to be keto. It can be high protein. How does a high protein diet give you a metabolic advantage? It does so by increasing thermogenesis. Okay? So what you have is it takes more energy to break down and utilize protein than it does fat or carbohydrate. And so what you have is especially more than carbohydrate, so you have a metabolic advantage, which would actually be a disadvantage in a state of nature in the sense that it costs more calories to utilize protein as the building blocks of your tissue than it does to utilize it for fuel. Or than it does to utilize other things for fuel, like carbohydrates. So what you have is you have this metabolic advantage, which causes you to burn more calories to utilize the protein. Okay, so this is an advantage of a high-protein plant-based diet or a ketogenic plant-based diet. A lot of the health concerns associated with the ketogenic diet come from the high amounts of animal protein, which has a negative impact on the kidneys at high levels, at very high levels. And you also have a negative impact, of course, from, like I said, the new 5GC and the other pro-inflammatory cytokines and things like that in the meats that aren't in the plants. And you also have the removal of plants in a lot of these diets to get the carbohydrates lower. But you don't necessarily have to remove plants. You could be eating more things like seeds, nuts, things of that nature, above-ground vegetables, okay, non-starchy above-ground vegetables, stuff like that if you're following a low-carbohydrate vegan diet. Now, she also pulled apart the paleo diet. Now, my point with the paleo diet, and I'm getting into Brenda Davis here too, I guess I'm going to hit all these things up at one time. The paleo diet is a healthy diet. It really is a healthy diet. The thing that I would say is you might want to seek some of the more original teachings of Lauren Cordain in the sense that you might want more canola oil and less saturated fat. You should seek your fat from, in my opinion, you should seek your fat more from things like seeds and nuts on the paleo diet and less from things like high-fat animal products. Or even high-fat fish would be okay-ish as long as it's a smaller fish that has less mercury in it, such as sardines or anchovies or things of that nature, although they can be quite high in sodium. So if you're on a sodium-reduced diet, which I personally had to get off a sodium-reduced diet due to the fact that I kept getting low blood sodium. But my point is that the fish, such as salmon, I'll leave a link to the ones that are considered the best. Now, again, I follow a 100% plant-based diet. I'm not recommending people eat fish, but in place of mammal protein, which has the new 5GC and other inflammatory things in it like that, I would recommend fish from a nutritional standpoint in place of that, so long as the fish is lower in mercury. And again, with the contaminants, everybody's talking about these contaminants that were in these plant-based protein powders and all this stuff. This is one of the things Dr. Haider, or not Dr. Haider, but Paul Haider, Master Herbalist, pointed out, is that there's contaminants in protein powders. Well, this is because protein powders come from food, and there's a lot of contaminants in our food. Always has been. There always has been a lot of contaminants in our food. For example, the inorganic arsenic that's in rice, that's been there for a very, 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 very long time. It's just nobody looked until recently. You have to remember that arsenic comes from the crust of the earth. The way rice is grown in where it's highly saturated with water helps the arsenic to dissolve and go into the plant, etc. A lot of things have arsenic in them. A lot of things have lead in them. I believe spinach, I'll look for it, I believe spinach is actually high in lead. There are a lot of things that have these things in them. But what you have to use some common sense, and I promote 100% hydroponic growing methods because I think that's the healthiest way to grow food and reduce the contaminants of things like arsenic. You can't get arsenic in food if there's no arsenic in the growing medium, because that's where it's coming from, is the crust of the earth. If you're growing the food in a hydroponic manner, you're not going to be getting any arsenic in there if you're not putting it in there. But my point is these contaminants have been in our food supply forever. And it's ridiculous to pretend like, oh my God, there's arsenic in rice, we have to stop eating rice immediately. People have been eating rice for thousands of years. Arsenic has been in rice for thousands of years. Some of the people with the lowest cancer rates are eating a high rice diet, a rice-centered diet. And I know people are saying, well, that's a high carbohydrate diet. Yes, it's higher carbohydrate than I would recommend to people. But the fact of the matter is, what I'm saying is, you have, for example, brown rice, which has all these nutrients and B vitamins and other things in it, and it has these phytonutrients and these anti-cancer lignans or whatever that help, which is in flax seeds too, and this helps to fight cancer. I think what people need to start considering is the sources of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates more than necessarily the amounts of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. I do recommend going moderate to low on carbohydrates simply because, it's not the optimum. At least from what I've discovered in working with people and myself, a high carbohydrate diet is not optimal, especially for people that are prone to weight gain or that like to eat. A high carbohydrate diet is not optimal for maintaining a healthy body mass index. Okay? And if you're not getting enough protein, and I'm leaving links to this in the description, the need for protein, which is 0.8 grams per pound of body weight, to promote the reversal and or the stalling of sarcopenia, which is age-related muscle loss. Now, what you have to understand with that is two things. Number one, on a plant-centered diet, you probably need a little bit more protein because the amino acid profile is not exactly the best. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be eating a plant-centered protein, because that plant protein, because it's not the best, helps to control and regulate things like mTOR. So you still want to follow a 100% plant-centered diet if you can, but the fact of the matter is you might even need a little more protein than 0.8 grams per pound of body weight. And being that 0.8 grams per pound of body weight is so close to 1 gram per pound of body weight, which is what bodybuilders have been recommending since at least the 60s, I suggest, and what I try to eat, is 1 gram per pound of body weight. Now, you can do this without protein powders on a vegan, 100% plant-based diet, but it's going to be very difficult, and the amount of carbohydrates or fat in your diet are going to be through the roof, and your calories might be more than you might want. And this is where the use of what would be considered, what Paul Haider, master herbalist, would consider refined foods. Things like tofu and protein powders have to come in. because you have to get a concentrated amount of protein, whereas the omnivore would have the meat, the fish, the fowl, etc. The vegan does not have that, so you have to get a concentrated form of protein from somewhere. Now that can be tofu, which is incidentally higher in fat, so it's similar to meat in the sense that it's high fat, high protein, but it's higher in fat, or it would be something like textured vegetable protein, or something like beans, which are high carbohydrate, but you're going to need to control the amount of fat and total carbohydrate. You're going to have to focus on concentrated forms of protein, whether that's tofu or whether that's textured vegetable protein. And by the way, textured vegetable protein does not have to come from soy. It can come from oats. It can come from peas. There's all chickpeas. There's all different kinds of textured vegetable proteins on the market. Some are better than others, amino acid wise. The other thing is, if you're not overweight, there's nothing wrong with eating a grain, bean, and vegetable centered diet. Okay? As long as you're not overdoing it. And that helps to balance the amino acids and things like that. I personally only have one high carbohydrate meal a day. Again, I don't follow a ketogenic diet. I follow a high protein vegan diet. So I do have one high carbohydrate meal a day, sometimes 2 or 3, depending on the day. I don't eat the same every day. And it's important to understand that if you're focusing on protein, getting the right fats, and getting high fiber sources of carbohydrate, and this is the thing too. Where are you getting your carbs? Are you getting your carbs from high fiber sources like vegetables and whole grains, or are you getting them from high, more calorically dense sources that are not high in fiber, that are just, they've had the fiber removed? And that's what's important to remember. And now when saying that same thing, refined protein products like textured vegetable protein, you have a bit of a benefit there because they're removing the fiber and they're removing the other carbohydrates and things like that, in the sense that you're getting the protein without the other macronutrients, allowing it to be more protein centered. Now, to get into I keep calling him Dr. Bruce Haider, Master Herbalist. To get into Bruce Haider's exercise routine, and remind you, I'm not judging this guy. At this point in my life, I hope to make it to 68, okay? But the dude's obviously no Vladimir Putin. He's not taking no Skulichev molecule. Check my video out on the Skulichev molecule for more on that. But I mean, he was doing these pull-ups for the back. These, I don't know what you'd call them. It's like a reversed bench press with these rings, like gymnast rings. And what's funny is he's jumping. No, it wasn't that. It was the pull-ups with the leg raises, with the rings. He's jumping into the pull-ups and bringing his legs up. Jumping into the pull-ups and bringing his legs up. This is almost as bad as Frank Tufano's form. When Frank Tufano was demonstrating weightlifting methods. So it's a bad idea to be not controlling your body movement. I mean, the whole point of body weight exercise is it's like with any weight, you're trying to control the movement. You're focusing on proper muscle contraction. I think proper muscle contraction and mind-muscle connection is in a lot of ways way more important than the amount of weight you're working with. But the thing is, this dude, and I'm not picking on him. Remember, this is an older gentleman, but his form was terrible in the exercise, and the link will be in the description. And the sad truth is, if that's how you're exercising, you're doing a little bit of a cheat, okay? And you're probably getting some benefit, but you would probably be getting a lot more benefit if you're too weak to do a pull-up. You might be better off doing something more like light weightlifting or something like that. That's just my personal opinion as a former personal trainer. That's what's going to pay off there probably. If you're too weak to do that, do something else instead of cheating. And focus on the contraction of the muscles. And obviously the gentleman, his body, the shape of his body, he needs more protein and less carbohydrate in his life. That's my opinion there. He needs more protein, less carbohydrate, and probably needs to, he's probably seeking proper fats because his diet, but his diet is too high in carbohydrate to control his waist circumference. And remind you, I destroyed my body with the starch solution. So my waist circumference, I think my waist is about 34 inches. I have to get it back down to about 30 inches. Okay, but when I was fat from that starch diet, my waist was 38 inches around. Okay, now I got to get my waist back down to 30 inches, which is perfectly doable following a properly balanced diet. But clearly from the shape of this gentleman, you can tell that his diet is suffering. His macronutrient profile is suffering because he is not including things like protein powder in his diet. He is not including things like concentrated forms of protein like tofu. Well, he might include tofu, but he doesn't have enough of it, and he doesn't have enough of these concentrated protein sources in his diet. And that's the thing is, what people need to keep in mind is just because you're vegan doesn't mean you can stop eating concentrated protein sources. Humans are omnivores. We do eat concentrated protein sources. I don't think there's anything wrong with a beans and rice diet, so long as you're going a little heavier on the beans than the rice. And yes, it is high carbohydrate, and I do have that video to do on fiber still about how fiber is not processed as regular carbohydrates or regular calories, and how there's another metabolic advantage to eating a high fiber diet, and I'll get into that in another separate video. But my point is that if you're really trying to maintain proper body mass and do proper body recompositioning, a very high carbohydrate diet is not going to benefit you. A lot of cardio, which does burn calories, might not help you as much as weightlifting might with body recompositioning. Okay, so when you have a big belly, and I'm not picking on the guy, but what I'm saying is if you have a big waist circumference like he does, you need to work on probably on more strength training, because the thing is with cardio, if you're just doing cardio, it burns calories, but it also, you're not gaining the muscle. You're not necessarily losing muscle with cardio. That's a big myth where people are like, I don't want to cardio away all my muscle. You're not cardioing away all your muscle. You didn't have the muscle to begin with. Okay? Because if you did have the muscle, pretty much eating a high protein diet and doing cardio, you're going to retain your muscle that was already there. But the strength training helps to add the muscle, helps to reverse the sarcopenia, which then there's the afterburn effect. Muscle is metabolically active. Muscle burns calories just by existing. Fat, not so much, although there is brown fat and things like that, and I can get into that in later videos too. But the thing is, and I also want to get into what's called, I might as well do it in this video, why not go for broke? There was a gentleman, I think his name's Christopher Berglund, or Bergman, I'll leave a link to the book. It's called The Athlete's Way. And I'm not going to get into the book, but the part on nutrition, he rode a bike for like 24 hours or something. He's a triathlete. He's also the first openly gay triathlete, if I remember correctly, which is ridiculous because that's what he's more famous for than being a world-class triathlete. Oh, he's gay. That's more important. Same thing with Terry Walls. Oh, she's gay. Let's forget about all the important research she did. She's gay, you know. But this gentleman, one of the things that I liked in his book that he said was nutrition, food should be a source of nutrition, not neurosis. Now, he talks about eating things like donuts. I would never consume things like donuts, but I will tell you this. I started getting away from, I'm making sure I'm hitting my protein goals and stuff like that, but I'm starting to make sure, am I just getting high fiber, blah, 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 blah. I stopped allowing my food to be a source of neurosis. Now, I do follow a healthy diet. I don't eat anything like frickin' donuts or anything like that, but I had to realize I had to stop with this orthorexia stuff because it was destroying my ability to eat properly. Listening to people like Dr. Greger, who's having a conniption over brown rice, which is unnecessary from what the research shows. It's not necessary to have a conniption over wholesome, healthy foods that have been eaten for thousands of years. Okay, it just isn't. So, again, make sure your food is a source of nutrition, not neurosis. Nutrition, not neurosis. Don't let your diet drive you crazy. And that's all for this video.